Today I'm delighted to speak with Colin Kingsmill. Colin, you are an entrepreneur and coach. After the first part of your career in Swiss banking for a decade, co-founding an investment firm and having ticked all the boxes of success, in 2001 you gave everything you owned away, Buddha style, and moved back to Canada to start fresh. You are now an expert in helping people fearlessly pivot and make meaningful shifts in their lives when they find themselves at a daunting personal or professional intersection. Your mission is to help people rediscover their humanity, be fearless and free. Colin, welcome to Personal Development Mastery. It's a joy to have you here with me
Oh,
today.
thank you. It's great to be here too. Thank you. Thanks for having me.
I'm looking forward to this conversation, Colin, and we will explore today becoming fearless and rediscovering your humanity. Before we go there,
Sure.
can you share a bit more about that pivotal moment in 2001 when you decided to give everything away and start fresh? So, what inspired you to such a radical life change?
Do you know, it was kind of a spiritual awakening, actually. That might sound a little woohoo for some of your audience, but I just literally woke up one day. It was April 6th, 2001. It was a Friday. I had this, I don't know how else you would describe it. I just had this moment of realization that everything I had done for 15 years was not serving me, not feeding me, not nourishing me, not nourishing my soul. So everything that I wanted to do when I was a young adult or when I was in university, nice cars, nice house, nice wife, nice this, nice that, trip, all the quote unquote markers of success, I had achieved all of those. And I was just the most miserable, unhappy, probably unfriendly person you could imagine. And that Friday, that weekend, I realized that the destination that I had been trying to get to and trying to achieve and trying to have was empty. There was nothing there. And the fact that I had all that stuff and had all those experiences that left me, depressed and full of anxiety and unhappy and unfulfilled, the everything, right? Just I just said to myself, I've got to shed this cloak. I've got to remove the mask. I've got to start again, basically. So it was, many people in life get hit by something that will stop them in their tracks, right? Whether it's medical or whether it's mental or whatever, right? Divorce. I mean, there's many variations of the theme that I had, but I certainly got stopped in my tracks, and something told me that I needed to start over, and that's what I did. So I gave everything away. I gave mountains of Italian clothing to my colleagues that were going to stay in banking. I gave, Cartier watches to my cleaning lady. I wish she would. I'd love to hear from her again. I can't remember, but I gave everything away. And it was really liberating, Aggie. It was like, wow, this is just such a relief, that I don't need all that stuff. And I decided to move back to somewhere, at the time anyway, that I thought was healthy and close to nature and close to old friends. So I moved back to Vancouver after 10 or 12 years in Europe. That's the first time I did it. I did it again.
That Friday that you said you had that spiritual awakening.
Yeah.
What was there something happening, something in particular? Were you doing something in particular? I mean, did it happen during meditation?
Look, I actually did, and I actually did something called rebirthing.
Okay.
And rebirthing, look, I was so not into all of this stuff. I had no idea. I didn't know about yoga. I didn't know about meditation. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
about spirituality. I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
about mindfulness. Nothing. Okay.
Okay.
But friends of mine dragged me to these things like Reiki classes, and they're like, "You're too stressed out, man. You're gonna have a heart attack. You're gonna die, and you're 32 years old or 35 or whatever I was, right?" And they took me to this rebirthing session, and which is designed to regulate your breath, right? And obviously today breath work has become much more mainstream, but at the time it wasn't. And
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Oh, regulate your breath. What are you talking about?" I'm like, "I breathe just fine." And I had something that they called a past life regression. So it was designed as a breathwork exercise, and it turned into past life regression.
Mm-hmm.
I saw all of these lives. I was in them. I had no idea how to explain it. So I went to my psychiatrist, who also happened to be a historian, a Buddhist, a military jet fighter, and a psychiatrist. So he had
Mm-hmm.
this really well-rounded education, I guess,
Yeah.
and experience. And he said, "Well, look, the thing that you're describing, that's between Morocco and Algiers, and the other thing you're describing, that's in Turkey, and the other thing you're describing, that's in southern Italy. It's not in England." So I came out of that and I was like, "Oh, okay. So I don't have to prove anything to anybody in this lifetime." I know that sounds probably totally weird, but up until that age, I was trying to prove something to everybody,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people get into that trap of having to prove something to somebody. And I know that where that origin story came from. I know how I got there. I wanted to be the antithesis of what I was when I grew up, so I did the antithesis, and proving something to everybody except myself, maybe, um, of who I was and what I could be and why you needed to love me, and that whole healing, that whole core wound of unworthiness, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was really the trigger event, which I don't often go into, but it was this, here's this Swiss banker dude who had never done anything metaphysical, and all of a sudden it's like, oh wow, hold on, wait, I have a I have more time. I
Mm-hmm.
actually came out of that going, I have more time, so stop rushing, basically. If that makes sense.
It does, and those trigger events like the one that you described, I enjoy hearing them because I think they happen to many, and they really have the power to shift their life.
Hmm.
They can be on different experiences or at
Sure.
different settings. So that's why I'm always intrigued to find out about that transition point, that tipping point that things
Yeah.
turned around. And there were
Yeah.
two things that I highlighted from what you said in the story, and the one was that you said that you realize that you don't have to prove anything to anyone, and I think I can resonate with with that, and I think many listening now can, at least to some level, resonate to that. Maybe they
Right.
have not admitted it to themselves that this is a driver or the main driver behind what they're doing. But I think so. I'm letting this sink in for a moment. That's why I'm
Mm-hmm.
repeating it for someone
Mm-hmm.
listening to maybe consider whether trying to prove something is a motivator behind their actions.
Oh
Uh,
yeah, baby. I mean, yes, right? So in the subsequent years I've been doing a lot of coaching, right?
yeah.
And so many people make choices all day long from morning until night based on that core wound of unworthiness
Mm,
and that need to prove
mm,
something to somebody else. So So I think it's good that you stop and reflect on that one point, because it's kind of critical to everything that's going on in the world today. People are living as adults, as parents, as entrepreneurs, as employees, as employers, and everything they do is seen through that lens
Mm,
of having to prove something, right?
yeah.
So my sort of mission these days is, tell me what would happen if we took those lenses away, right? The opacity through which you see life. What
Mhm.
would happen, or what could happen, if you were free from those stories, from those narratives, from those
Mhm.
beliefs? It's pretty it's it's pretty amazing to think of the possibilities, the unlimited possibilities for all of your listeners if they removed those lenses of unworthiness through which they see their lives and through which they make decisions all day long.
Mm.
So that's not my challenge, that's my mission, really.
Colin, thank you for this answer. And actually, let's move into that because
Sure.
you mentioned the narratives or
Mm-hmm.
these beliefs of
Mm-hmm.
unworthiness. You used the term unworthiness.
Yep.
In my mind, the term that came to my mind was not good enough, which is
Yeah.
basically the same thing.
Yes.
And in a way, I think it's obvious to most people listening right now how that could be beneficial. But my question is the next following step: how can one go about starting to deconstruct these narratives? Because you say, imagine if those lenses were taken off, but I'm sure that you know very well that
Mm-hmm.
that is easily said than done. These lenses most of the times are completely invisible to the people
Sure.
who wear them. So
Yeah.
how does
Yes.
one start to this process of deconstructing them?
um That's a good question, and I don't think there's a one size fits all, right? I have, in the book that I'm writing, I have like 7 or 8 steps, right, um, about becoming fearless, right, and becoming fearless is really shedding those stories and shedding those narratives, but it's got to be a proactive process. Okay, now whether it's my 8 steps or whether it's somebody else's, I don't think it matters, but it's got to be a proactive process of almost self-protection, right? So the first thing that I say is turn off the news, right? Turn off turn and turn off all toxicity that's coming into your life,
Yeah.
right? That could be food, that could be family, um, that could be relationships, that could be a job, that could be any number of things that are adding toxicity to your thought process, right?
Mm.
And the reason I say turn off the news as the kind of the top line is that's a product, right? And it's a product to keep you engaged and to sell advertising, right? But that's not informing you and that's not helping you. So my first step is turn off the news, right? The second step to me is start to listen to yourself. And I think you kind of hinted on this before, that uh, our body is always sending us messages, right? Now, the mind may be saying something else, like, oh, push through this. And, oh, yeah, you mentioned it before about entrepreneurs. Oh, no, I was talking to somebody else earlier about, entrepreneurs or founders pushing themselves and pushing themselves and pushing themselves without self-care, right? So you've got to listen to yourself. You've got to listen to your body. You've got to listen to the messages that it's sending you. My next step, if you want, um, uh, is it, how do I say this? Design a picture of the life that you want. the life that you really want, right?
Yeah.
I think so often, we're conned to believe that we are not the designers. We're not the architects of our life, right? We're not responsible for our thoughts. We're not responsible for the stories or the ideas that come into our head. Well, we are, right? So own it, but design what you want, right? And then once you've designed the and I've got my vision boards over here. I've got like you just you design it, right? So design what you want, and then you break it down into a series of goals that you can actually achieve, right? Because it's so easy to have the motivational poster on the wall, right? Right. And then you just look at it, or I don't know, you want a Ferrari, or you want I don't know, whatever you want, right? You got that on the wall. That's not enough. You have to break it down into a strategy of how do I get to that destination, right? I use sailing a lot as a metaphor, right? Like if you don't put the coordinates in to where you want your sailboat to go, then you're just bouncing along on the open sea and on the waves, right? So design the life you want, put the coordinates in your GPS, right? Take the steps along the way to get there, okay? Babies, and Mel Robbins did a really good episode on her podcast recently about goal setting and the latest research around goal setting. So once you've got the destination, once you've plotted your course and you've plotted all the steps along the way, decide what are the daily rituals to keep you on track, to keep you accountable. Okay? Because so often it's so easy to wake up in the morning and turn on the news, turn on Twitter, turn on porn, whatever you're doing, right? As a quote unquote coping mechanism or as a starter to your day, change them, right? What are the daily rituals that are going to help you stay on track? Whether it's meditation or yoga or mindfulness or whatever, doesn't matter. But have those and do them and stop self-sabotaging, basically. Now, the last step, or the second to last step, is forget about what others think. And that's why I say live in integrity, right?
Yes.
So often we are bound up by what we think other people are going to think and do, but that's just restrictive. That's not getting your creative energies going. That's not expressing who you really are. And if you don't express who you really are, that internalizes into dis-ease, and that might be mental dis-ease or other forms. And there's lots of research around this. I'm not being sort of crazy and woohoo. And then the last point for me, to answer your question, is forget about everything you've learned. And what I mean by that is, don't forget about everything. That would be a tough start to the day. But forget about the conditioning that is no longer serving you. Right? And that goes back to the storytelling, right? So the forget about everything you've learned is forget about the conditioning that is no longer serving you today. And what are the beliefs that you are perpetuating or telling yourself or repeating to yourself? Again, old stories, right? It happens. We all tell ourselves stories all day long, right? How many thoughts do we have a day, Aggie? 70,000 or something?
70,000, something like that.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, right? So if 69,000 of those are negative stories that aren't serving you, stop telling them or stop listening. Tell new ones. So did I answer? I don't know. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you did. You actually gave in these few minutes quite a comprehensive step by step. I will reiterate a little bit in my own words how I
Sure.
understood what you said. So you said the
Of
first to
course.
start listening to yourself, to your body messages,
Yep.
and that is I completely agree. It's so important because the body or and I will digress here and say that the body is very much connected to our essence or our spirit. It
Hmm.
is what our spirit uses in a way to communicate all these
Sure.
things with us. So start listening to them. And then you said about setting the goals. And when you were saying about the sailing and setting the GPS, you reminded me of that phrase that says, if you don't know where you're going, you will end up exactly there. So it's really important to
Yeah.
really write it down in detail. I mean, I have some kind of I use the phrase North Star or like
Hmm.
a guiding light, and that's broken down in different categories in life,
Sure.
emotional or material or personal
Sure.
development or all these things.
Yep.
Um, and then you said about deciding the daily rituals that you need to implement or the ones that you need to delete or
Yep.
change or
Yep.
improve. I think the word improve also
Sure.
is important.
Well, you know why? Because, and I say, decide on your daily rituals to keep
Uh-huh.
your personal protection barrier around you, right? So
Yeah.
once you've turned off the news and you've eliminated toxicity, you've got to have those daily rituals because we are living in a toxic society.
Mm-hmm.
We are bombarded left, right, and center. You just have to walk out the front door of your house, and you are bombarded with messaging all day long that is gonna try and deviate you from your North Star, right?
Mm. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
so the daily practice, the daily rituals, whatever they are for you, are kind of important. They're not kind of important, they're fundamental to protect yourself from what is going on in a very hyper novel society that our human biology is not accustomed to yet.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I think those are so important, right?
Absolutely.
It's not just
Absolutely.
like, oh, go do yoga. It's no, you're doing this for a purpose, right?
Yeah, and for each person that would be different. It's not
Yeah.
like one recipe. I say sometimes that if there was one particular recipe or action or solution to everyone's problems, then we would know it by now. But
Hmm.
each of us has an individual path, individual challenges, and individual steps that they need to take. So yes, your answer was, I believe, very comprehensive in this short amount of time. So thank you for that.
Oh, yeah, you're
Uh,
welcome.
there is one other thing you say, Colin, and
Mm,
that is you mentioned it earlier on the beginning of the conversation, and that was
yeah.
rediscovering your humanity. So I want to ask you,
Mm,
first of all, how do you mean that? And second, how does that connect with what we're talking about, what we have been talking about just now?
sure. So I think I think in today's modern culture, at least in the West, we are surrounded with distractions, right?
Hmm.
We're surrounded with distractions that are dividing us, that are um, hurting us, that are making us sick. Um, all you have to look at is things like food, okay, and uh, and how damaging something like, well, we don't have to get into it, but just think about food or politics or identity politics or the culture war or whatever. It's all dividing us,
Hmm.
right? Or even you think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, which is quite popular these days. What if we thought about the fact that we are all one species on a little rock flying at 1,670 kilometers an hour on its axis through something called the universe? Okay. How would you, how would I, how would others approach life if we came from We're all one. We're a bunch of little things on a rock. Can we all remember that? And I think if we started to do that, that would trickle down into how corporations feed us, how big pharma medicates us, how people start or finish wars, how cultural division occurs, how genders, have gone all over the place. I'm just saying, can we get back to the center of us being one population on a rock? So for me, it's really about, I mean, another way you could say that is get some perspective, right? Get some perspective on what's going on and rise above the day-to-day war on whatever the latest war is on culture or gender or human. There's so many of them, right? It's like we're just one. We're just one population, one humanity on a little rock. And I think what was that? What was the satellite? I forget which satellite it is that's taking photos from 3 gajillion miles away. I should know the answer, but honestly, like, get some perspective. And once you get some perspective, you can be kinder to yourself, kinder to your neighbor, kinder to the person down the street, kinder to the person of a different color or a different ethnicity or a different background or different anything. If we treat a baseline of humanity as our starting point, as opposed to a reason to find division. That's what I mean by rediscover your humanity. And if you take the rediscovery of humanity and you blend it with living in integrity, so being who you really are, right? And also kind of exercising your purpose and your power, right, on this planet, and so if you blend it with that, and then you become fearless, well, that to me says you can become unlimited, and you become limitless, and you can serve this world, right, as opposed to be a victim of it, right? And if you're serving this world, then in my modest opinion, you become free from psychological suffering. So they're all interconnected, you see, for me anyway.
This perspective that you mentioned of who we are, I have experienced it, that shift in the perspective when I'm in a very tall building, like the Shard in London or the Burj Khalifa in Dubai. When you are in 100th floor and you look down,
it's scary.
It really makes you real. Well, that's another thing, but
we don't go there.
It makes you real. Personally, I love heights, but let's not go into that. But that perspective of realizing how small everything is when you look from that point of view, and equally that is also you. So rather than having our ego being all the time inflated or saying I, me, all this all the time, that perspective, that came to my mind when you were talking about the realizing that we are all beings on a rock flying in space.
It's like, I like that analogy, though. I might use that. Go up to the top floor of the Shard and see how big you feel.
Yeah, it's very difficult to when you look down and you see people, humans are like ants or even smaller than that. That's exactly who we are also from when someone looks from above. But we tend to forget that, don't we? And we just think that so. All the universe revolves around us and everything that we do, which brings us back to some of the other things you were talking about earlier.
Yeah, you said it perfectly. I don't need to add anything else. Sorry. It's perfect. Yeah.
Colin, this mission
Mm-hmm.
that you are on
Yeah.
rediscovering the humanity, why are you on that mission? What's your motivation?
That's a good question. I am on it because for some reason, I just see so much suffering.
Mm.
I see so much psychological suffering. And in what I do, with my coaching work or with my management consulting work, or just, I don't know, maybe that's what I've focused on.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think people deserve to be living like this, with so much disease, with so much suffering, with so much mental illness. And, all of the numbers are skyrocketing. The data from the last 20 or less years on everything that's going on. I don't think we deserve to live like this.
Mm.
So I suppose I've discovered my purpose, however big or small that is, but it's definitely to help people be free from the psychological suffering or metabolic suffering that they might be living in. We don't deserve it.
100% agree. We don't deserve it. And yeah, that's a huge topic on its own, Colin. So
Oh yeah, I'll come back.
Yeah, I'll probably leave that alone.
We
For
can do
now,
another.
anyway.
We can do another call anytime you want on the state of
That's partly
humanity.
Yes, yes. Colin, I'm always big on giving to the listeners something actionable as a result or as a conclusion of the conversation in some way.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's one piece of advice or one simple practice that our listener can incorporate, implement into their life today or tomorrow morning so that they can
Yeah,
begin that journey towards fearless living that you said
sure.
earlier?
Sure. You know what I would say is, first of all, it doesn't have to be like this. So recognize that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And recognize that you, me, everybody has a Flintstone moment, right? So when the rock hits the rock and the spark ignites on how you are going to decide on the next minute or the next day of your life, you are responsible for that decision.
Mm-hmm.
So you can go up or you can go down. You decide. So I guess the thing to leave people with is, where are you going to take that Flintstone moment? Are you going to go up or are you going to go down? And based on that decision, you come up with the narratives and the stories and the plan for the day. So decide. What do you want it to be?
It starts with a decision for sure. Thank you for that
And it's a
answer.
it's a millisecond, okay, Aggie? And a lot of people don't realize that it's a millisecond. But you've made a decision. So that's all, that's important.
Colin, I have a couple of last quick questions
Of course, yeah.
to ask you to wrap it up. Before I
Sure.
do that, where will you direct a listener who wants to find out more about you and your work and mission?
Yeah, you can come to my website, colinkingsmill.com. It's pretty easy. I'm also on Instagram. That's kind of really all I do. LinkedIn, I'm on there too. But yeah, colinkingsmill.com, and then from there you can go into team coaching, you can go into Instagram, you can go into my blog, you can go wherever you want. Just go to colinkingsmill.com.
Awesome, thank you. And my two quick fire questions, which I
Uh-oh.
always ask my guests. The first one is, what does personal development mean to you?
It means freedom.
And
So would you like? I can expand if you like.
It was. I think.
But to me, personal development means getting to a place where you are free from stories and narratives and and psychological suffering or depression or anxiety or whatever is holding you back and down. So that to me is personal development.
Yeah, that's fantastic.
But you have to embody it. You can't just know about it, right? So don't just read the books and have Eckhart Tolle on your desk and read it 10 times over. Power of Now is great, but you need to embody it. Okay.
Of course, it's a whole different thing to know about something and embodying the knowledge and practicing the knowledge, putting it into action. And
exactly.
That's also one of my missions as a podcast host, to provoke the listener to actually take action on the knowledge. Otherwise, knowledge is useless if you don't do anything with it.
Yeah. I mean, trust me, I've done it. I did it for 20 years.
Me too.
I read all the books, right? It's like, and they're all back there and up there and over there. But you got to feel it.
Okay.
What's the next question?
The next question is hypothetical, and it is if you could go back in time and meet your 18-year-old self. What's one piece of advice you would give him?
You are worthy. And you don't have to prove anything to anyone. Maybe that's the second part, the latter. You do not have to prove anything to anyone. You are complete already. That's what I would say.
Beautiful. Thank you. Colin, I want to thank you very much. This has been a truly fascinating conversation, which I had a feeling that it would have been, but it really exceeded my expectations. Thank you very much for sharing your wisdom with us today.
Thank you.
I want to wish you all the very best with your mission of helping people rediscover their humanity. Any last parting words from you?
No. I mean, I think I already said it. Life does not have to be this way. Or life, if you are feeling stuck, it does not have to be this way. There's a way out. So let us help you.
Thank you.